So the other day I flew to San Francisco and went to EA HQ to play a brand new game called Immortals of Aveum, and in this video I wanted to give you guys a bit of like a first impressions and review of what I think about the game. I'll be sharing with you my initial thoughts on the game itself and explaining how stuff works, and I do want to thank EA for sponsoring this video. So the premise of this game is you join the Immortals and you play as Jack, who is an elite Triarch Magnus, and the game operates off a basic 3 different color of magic system. They all have different functions and properties, and you use these in combination with each other to either perform in combat, take down bosses, solve puzzles, etc. This is basically the bread and butter of the core gameplay loop, is flipping back and forth between all of these different, primarily 3 spells. But within those spells, you also have special abilities that can be used in combination with each other. There are over 25 spells and 80 different talents that you can use to really hone in on your fighting style and your preferred method of play. And also, the magic itself is not just for offensive capabilities, they have defense properties as well. So it's the core bread and butter to how you actually go interacting with enemies, bosses, and just getting around the game in general, and even solving these puzzles like I mentioned. The game is built in Unreal Engine 5.1, so the reason this was done is to give them more capability of the technology they can implement and do bigger and better things with stuff like boss enemies or just combat encounters and even level design. While it does have more open-ended, structures in their world design and puzzles and levels, it's not an open world game. It's still ultimately a linear campaign experience and very cinematic at that. Now, the thing I noticed immediately when playing it was actually the way that it felt on both mouse and keyboard and controller. I'm primarily a controller player. That's what I've natively always grown up on playing and what I typically tend towards. But with this game, for some reason, I don't know if it was a settings issue or something like that, but the game actually felt better to me to play on mouse and keyboard, which is odd because usually a game is never like that. And also, with the amount of different combo spell abilities you can have, they have to be mapped to different combinations of buttons, whereas if you're playing on keyboard, you can actually bind a lot more of these, very unique spell combinations to a completely separate key. Just based on the amount of different functions there are, it actually might be better or more advantageous to play on mouse and keyboard, although you can absolutely do both. So your 3 main weapons are your blue magic, which is like your very precise, high DPS, very like hand cannon feeling kind of weapon, which was my personal favorite. And then you have the red magic, which is your shotgun feeling kind of spell and ability, which is, very suited for up close. And then you have green, which is like life magic, and it kind of tracks enemies in some like automatic way a little bit. It will follow them essentially, but it doesn't do crazy damage. So you can use these based on the enemy you're fighting or whatever the encounter is. The thing I noticed was I genuinely really enjoyed the core combat loop, and it was made even better by the game's boss fights. We only played a handful of them, but the boss fights that I did play were actually extremely well designed in my opinion. They were very straightforward in terms of concept, but they had a lot of interesting different mechanics that you could interact with, and based on your playstyle and your spells that you like to use, can totally alter the feel and the challenge of the fight itself. Each boss, and while they were all distinctly different in terms of moves and mechanics, they still retain that really like frenetic, fast-paced that Immortals of Aveum is trying to capture within their core combat. It doesn't break that at all or go at odds with the systems they're trying to, have in place, and I really appreciated that about the game. However, one of the issues I did have with this game was the performance was sometimes a little bit inconsistent, and again, this is built on Unreal Engine 5.1. They're really trying to push boundaries with a lot of the stuff that they can do, and also we were playing a test build that was obviously not the final product. There's still a little bit of time where they're going to be polishing things, and I assume a lot of these inconsistencies within the performance are probably going to be addressed right away, but that was one of the things is especially during really intense combat encounters, my performance would dip to about 30 frames, and that coupled with how weird it felt to play on controller made it like almost unplayable in a couple cases. But again, I think that's an easily fixable thing that I'm sure they're addressing right away. Now, Immortals of Aveum does have a very interesting and deep progression system, not only when it comes to your actual sigil, which is your primary weapons, but also in terms of the gear and armor you can wear. So you can unlock by, either defeating enemies or exploring different parts of the map, doing puzzles to get extra things that can assist you on your way, i.e. rings that, maybe will boost a certain attribute of one of your magic spells or some other like kind of passive abilities. And these can be extremely helpful given all the different types of combat encounters that you're likely going to run into. Now, I feel like the implementation of a lot of these puzzles where like you would have this secret locked chest and something in the environment had to be triggered for you to be able to access that was really well implemented. You had these kind of, they're sort of like God of War feeling chests where like, oh, you need to use your weapons and interact with these certain puzzles in a way that will unlock and give you access to that. And that stuff was really well done. There's not too many of them, but the puzzles themselves are really well thought out and they're actually fun to do. So that's a big plus in my opinion. Now, as far as like atmosphere, story, and themes and all that stuff, we don't know much about the actual story itself outside of the premise and the handful of levels that we played, but more broad picture, the idea is that you have a lot of these, you know, fantasy elements, right? It's even the art style, the timepieces, etc. Like it's very much, you know, this fantasy feeling game, but it's juxtaposed by the characters using more modern sounding dialogue, and that is a style, perfectly valid style that you can go for, and I think a lot of people probably will enjoy that or get a kick out of it. I cannot honestly say that personally that's one of the things that does it for me. It's just not exactly my thing. And that all comes down to absolutely just a matter of personal preference, but it just doesn't happen to be my preference exactly. I like the style to be either like committing to the fantasy realm and elements or, you know, just do it completely modern in that kind of setting. So either way, if you enjoy that style, then you'll actually probably love this game a lot. It was also a bit more tricky to get a feel for how the characters are going to be because we sort of played a few levels where we jump all over the place, and it was hard to, you know, actually understand character arcs and how they act and where they go and that kind of thing. So it's something you're going to have to experience for yourself. But just more broad picture, my general impressions of the game is that it actually has a very solid core at its foundation. It has actually a lot of fun and really neat ideas that are baked into it that they actually get insanely right. I think the boss fights were probably the highlight of this game for me. Outside of a few like technical issues and some performance problems that I assume are being addressed, and those are the final few coats of polish that are being applied before the game actually releases later in July. That kind of stuff can really help it bring together as a full experience, I think. And so, you know, I'm looking forward to see how they're going to push this brand new Unreal Engine 5.1 to its limits with this game, and if they can maximize it to its potential, I think this game has a lot of cool stuff going for it. Well, there's still just a couple hiccups that need to be ironed out. If you're fundamentally looking for a new single-player game that really engages the combat side of things, and you have a variety of ways to approach it, and you like that feeling of progression and customizing your character and getting all of that stuff as it plays through, and you like a cinematic campaign experience, and in particular, this kind of theme and atmosphere that they're going for, where it's like this fantasy stuff merged with modern-day dialogue, if that is kind of something that you'd be interested in, then Immortals of Aveum will probably do it for you. If you're interested in checking it out, you can pre-order the game. It will be releasing on July 20th on PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series X and S, PC, and you can buy it on the EA app, Steam, or the Epic Games Store. And I do want to thank EA once again for sponsoring this video and appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate you guys for checking out the video. You can pre-order Immortals of Aveum using the link down below in the description, so be sure to go and check that out. Let me know what you think down below, and I will see you guys in the next one.